I want to introduce you to a concept known as Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim, or the actions of the fathers are a direction for the sons, and we'll elaborate on that a little bit later. But that concept explains a lot. But let's begin here with a verse in Isaiah. And the verse says, Ki ata avinu. So I'm quoting selectively. You are our father, surely our father. And it's not talking about Hashem. It's actually talking about one of our patriarchs. And I'm going to kind of engage you here and see which of our fathers we're talking about here. I think this must be the one. Am I right? Yes. Are we talking about Abraham? Are we talking about Isaac? Are we talking about Jacob? So it says, you are our father. Which of the three would this be? So please put your votes in. I'll give you a minute. Okay. I mean, it's a choice of one of three, so you got to pick one. Just click. Okay. Because I think that I have a. Come on, we got to have 5 more respondents, please. We're even 6 now, I think.
Sorry,
There we go.
why don't you put it up again? Oh, disappeared.
It disappeared. I don't know how to do that. Can you see it?
No, Rabbi.
Okay.
But I think it's my fault. But it's gone.
Yeah, I don't know what more to do. But let's try again. Yeah, it's there. It's running. But let me just share the results with you because they're very predictable in my mind. 2/3 of respondents answered Abraham. 1/3 answered Jacob. Nobody answered Isaac. Let me share results. Can you see that anyway? I don't know. I'm not sure. And there we go. Now, why did I expect this? Because the first of the three, of course, Avram Avinu, we call him Avram Avinu. We call them all Avinu, but he's like the first one. He's Avinu. He's our forefather. He's the father of the entire nation. He started it all. So if you can only give the title to one of the three, I would have thought, well, no, it's got to go to Avram Avinu. It's got to go to him because he's been the father at the beginning. You know, he started it all. And my other immediate thought would have been Yaakov. And why Yaakov? Well, because Yaakov is really the father of our nation. Abraham is more universal because Abraham had a son Ishmael. Yitzchak had a son Esav. But Yaakov, all 12 of his children, all 12 of his sons, became the heads of the tribes. And therefore, if it was left for me to just guess what the correct answer is, I would have gone for Abraham first, I would have gone for Yaakov second. Let me share with you the full verse, which is strange. So this is the selective quote, but the full verse reads, here we are. You are our father, for Abraham has no regard for us, and Israel, that's Yaakov, doesn't recognize us. So that's the verse in Isaiah, which is a very strange one, which I'd like to elaborate on. But I'd like to do this with the help of this concept here of well, let's talk about Yaakov for a bit, because this is very significant. This is scene 1 in the parasha. Sorry, about Yitzchak, not about Yaakov. Scene 1 in the parasha is Yaakov and Esav's birth, the sale of the birthright, the lentil soup, and so forth. But the parasha really is more about Yitzchak than about Yaakov. Next week's parasha, we'll move on to the life of Yaakov. So Yitzchak, Isaac, it says there was a famine in the land. This is besides from the previous famine that happened in the days of Abram, which was many years earlier. Isaac went to Avimelech, king of the Philistine, in Gerar. Actually, we can work out how long it was. It was about a century from the last century, from the last famine, because the previous famine happened before Yitzchak was born. Abraham was, 100 when he was born, but this happened sometime before, and then this is now after the passing of Abraham. He lived to 175, so it's a long time later. And what Isaac does is he's following on the footsteps of Abraham. What did Abraham do when there was a famine? Well, he moved. He went to the obvious place, which is Egypt. Why Egypt? Egypt is less likely to have famines because Egypt has got the Nile, and the Nile irrigates the fields in the kind of the Nile Valley, because every year the river overflows its banks, and the Egyptians have developed an irrigation system. And I speak in the present tense because it's still what goes on today. And if you look at an aerial picture of Egypt, and you can see the Nile running, and then a very fertile Nile Valley, green, lush, but then you're actually in the middle of a desert. So Egypt is kind of more guaranteed an annual crop than other lands in the Middle East that rely on rain, and sometimes it rains, and some years the rains aren't as good. So this is why when there's a famine, Egypt seems to be a destination of choice. But Hashem appears to him, to Yitzchak, and says, "Don't go down to Egypt. Stay in the land which I point to you." And which is this land? It's here, this land. Remain here, and I'll be with you, and I'll bless you, and these lands are going to be yours. Well, I've assigned them all to you and to your heirs, fulfilling the oath that I had sworn to your father Abraham. Now, why can he not leave? Why was it okay for Abraham Avinu to leave the Holy Land, Canaan, Eretz Israel, and go and get food from Egypt? And why does Yitzchak have to remain in Israel? Why are the rules different? So this is how Rashi explains it to us, but this is based on the Midrash Rabbah. Here, Genesis Rabbah, Bereshit Rabbah. He said he thought of going down to Egypt as his father had done in time of famine. Hashem says to him, "You do not go down to Egypt, for you are a burnt offering without blemish, and residence outside of the Holy Land is not befitting you." So this is, of course, the result of Abraham having, of Yitzchak, let's get the names right, having been put on an altar to become a sacrifice to Hashem. And as a result of that, he's consecrated and he's at a holier level than others. So he doesn't leave the Holy Land, he remains there. Whereas his father and his son, they went when they had to, and they did not have that restriction. But Yitzchak, because of his kind of having been elevated to a burnt offering, an olah, by having been bound to an altar, is at a higher level of sanctity that is not compatible with Chutz La'aretz, outside of the Holy Land of Israel. This takes us to a very important and basic core concept the phrase I showed you earlier, which is this Siman Avot, sorry, Maaseh Avot, Siman Lebanim, that the deeds of the fathers are an indication for the children. And we find that phrase for the first reference is in Medrash Rabbah. Medrash Rabbah discusses Yaakov sitting at the entrance of the tent in the heat of the day. This was a parasha 2 weeks ago, and Rachia said, if you look at the word he was sitting, which is the word Yoshev, Yoshev is written without a vav. It's kind of as if something is being taken out of his sitting, because he wanted to stand. And Hashem said to him, no, remain sitting. You're a model for your descendants. This is the quote in Hebrew. Shave, sit, ata siman levanecha. You're leading the way for your sons. And as the Midrash continues, you sit, the divine presence stands, and this will happen when people of Israel enter synagogues and study halls, sit, recite the Shema, they're sitting, and I'm over them. God stands in the assembly of the Almighty. So this idea is that the people sit and worship, and Hashem is standing there among them. That verse is actually also used when talking about judges who rule, and says that Hashem stands with them. Same idea, similar idea. And so Avram created a precedent for that, so to speak, by sitting at there, and Hashem came to visit him, to kind of offer him strength, support after the breast, the circumcision. So this phrase, Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim, actually first is found in a commentary on the Talmud called the Maharsha, but its earliest kind of source is this Medrash, where Hashem says to him, Ata siman lebanecha, you are a model, paving the way for your children. Most believe that this phrase here, Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim, is actually from the Ramban Nachmanides, but it's not true. The exact quote from Nachmanides is the following: Kol ma she'era la'avot siman lebanim. Whatever happened to the fathers is an indication, is a sign for the children. And this is how Ramban explains why there are great details about the journeys of the patriarchs. In this week's parasha, the digging of the wells, they dug one well, a second well, a third well, other events, which would appear to be superfluous, unnecessary, no useful purpose, but in truth, they serve a lesson for the future. An event happens to any of the patriarchs that is decreed to happen to his children can then be understood. And I'm going to give you some illustrations of this. So what I'd like to do with you tonight is show you how Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov represent 3 phases in the history of our people in that order. Abraham. So what do we know about Abraham? Abraham is in Israel. He's been sent there by Hashem. And there's a famine. And he has to leave Israel, goes to Egypt. He's in exile in Egypt. Not so very long. But while he's there, he is wife. He's not taken captive by the Pharaoh. And the result of taking Sarah into captivity is, it says that Hashem struck the Egyptians on account of Sarah. Then she is released, she is sent out of the land of Egypt, and Abraham and Sarah leave wealthy people. I may have deliberately slowed down, but the parallel is immediately obvious. This is a mini journey of the destiny of the Jewish people, as will happen a few generations down the line. The Jewish nation as a whole will, as a result of the famine, days of Jacob, Joseph's in Egypt, he's saving the entire Jewish people, the Egyptians, and the Jewish people, Yaakov, and his, at that stage, they're only 10 sons. The others are in Egypt, 11. Trying to remember the sequence. Yeah, 11 sons. And they go down to Mitzrayim to meet with Yosef, who's there already, cause the famine. Pharaoh subjugates them, takes them into captives, into slaves in the land. The result, Pharaoh is struck with a plague, plagues, 10 of them. And then he lets the Jews go, but not before he actually, as a nation, enriches the Jewish people, and they come out of there loaded with donkey loads of precious goods from Mitzrayim. So you can see just one act, just like the act of Abraham sitting that we looked at in the Medrash earlier, was indicative of something which would happen later on. This entire journey to go down to Egypt and then back to the Holy Land is kind of a siman. It's a sign of what will happen 3 generations down when the Jewish people end up being in Mitzrayim. That's Avraham. And what does Avraham represent? He represents the beginning of our history. And that stage of being in Israel, but then going into exile. The story of Yitzchak is very different. Yitzchak represents the Jewish people as they are in the ideal state, that is, living in the Holy Land. And that's why Yitzchak, as emphasized in the Rashi that we had on the screen earlier, Yitzchak does not leave Eretz Israel because it's consecrated. Even if there are challenges, Yitzchak remains in the Holy Land. And that really represents a period of 8 centuries or so where the Jews lived in the Holy Land, Temple era, this was their place. Was everything amazing? I wouldn't say so. Was Yitzchak's life amazing? No, his wife was taken captive again, and there was fights with the. This may ring and resonate with us. Fights with the Philistines, no relation to another nation that has a very similar sounding name, who said, you're encroaching on our territory, go away. So he didn't have an easy time, even as we lived as a sovereign nation in Israel for these centuries. It was the Yitzchak model of, there was some strife, but in the end we prevailed and Yitzchak remained there. And that's the sign that Yitzchak gives us by being the one who does not leave the Holy Land, who doesn't go away. And he represents, of course, that next phase in Jewish history. And then the third phase in Jewish history is exile. And that's Yaakov. He's good at it. He did it twice, east and west, or northeast and southwest. First, he had to run away from Esav, and he had to go live with Lavan for decades, running away from Esav, who was really going for him. So that was the first exile. Very harsh. Exile of Lavan. Lavan kind of eventually became an existential threat to him when he tried to actually kill him, wage war against him. That's exile. And then Yaakov going to Egypt subsequently after he's founded a family, and he thought he would, 3 parshas from the Vayeshev. Yaakov is sitting in Israel and is finally settled and is kind of made peace with Esav, and then there is the very sad story of Yosef being taken, being sold into slavery in Egypt, and eventually the famine. He ends up there, and this becomes kind of the pattern of exile. So that's Yaakov, phase 3 of Jewish history. Phase 4, of course, is where we headed. That's Mashiach. And Yaakov tried to kind of help by also paving the way, but the Messianic era is a mystery and cannot easily be pre-told. So you may remember the story of Yaakov calling his children around his deathbed, and the phrase he uses to call them is gather around, and I will tell you what will happen at the end of days. It is about to kind of reveal to them the roadmap to Mashiach, and then suddenly his memory fails him. It's a terrible moment because he says, does this mean that among the 12 sons standing, around me here, one of them is a wicked one? This is why prophecy is being denied me. And there's a famous exchange where the children of Israel turn around and they say, Shema Yisrael, listen Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We all believe faithfully in God. His response was, Baruch Shem Kol Malchut Olam, blessed be Hashem forevermore. Relief at the fact that they're all faithful. Obviously, it was not part of the divine plan that He revealed to them exactly how, when, where Mashiach is going to arrive. We have the roadmap. We know that it's about doing mitzvahs. All of us for long enough, and that's going to be Mashiach. But we don't know much more details than that, except that we kind of really getting fed up, and we hope we are at the very end of that very, very, very long road. So you can see, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov representing those phases, which gives us a bit of an understanding as to why. And Isaiah, speaking prophetically, he's talking about the future. We'll talk about whom as our father, whom as our inspiration, because what are we looking forward to? We're looking forward to a return to the Holy Land. And the model for that, well, we know. So I'm going to share with you a section from the Talmud. It's in Brachot, Shabbat, sorry. And Rabbi Yonatan is puzzled, as we have been, by that verse in Isaiah. What does it mean? For you, our father, not Abraham doesn't know us, Israel doesn't know us. You are our father, Redeemer. What does it mean? Are we talking about Hashem? Not necessarily, says the Talmud. So in the future, the Holy One, blessed be He, will say to Abraham, your children have sinned against me. And Abraham will say, Master of the universe, if that's the case, let them be eradicated to sanctify your name. Which kind of seems out of character for Avraham Avinu, who was a man of chesed, of kindness, but kind of, Hashem is pointing out that throughout this long and bitter exile, we've let him down. Throughout this time, we've erred, we've sinned, and we have caused trouble. And he's looking for a good advocate, but Abraham doesn't seem to be the one. And the next one is going to be Yaakov. Yaakov will say and subtext between the lines. Yaakov has had the pen of raising children, so maybe he'll be able to ask for mercy on their behalf. And he says, your children have sinned. And Yaakov says the same, Master of the universe, if so, let them be eradicated to sanctify your name. There is no reason, and Hashem says, hey, there is no reason in elders and no wisdom in youth. Elders would be Abraham, the oldest of the three. Yaakov would be the youth, and of course, he doesn't really find much comfort in the advice and the judgment passed by Abraham and Yaakov. And then finally, he turns to Yitzchak. He says, your children have sinned against me. And Isaac's answer is, Master of the universe, are they my children, not your children? At Sinai, when they recorded precedents, they said, Naaseh v'nishma, we'll do, then we'll listen. Didn't you call them my son, my firstborn? Now they have sinned, they suddenly become my children and not your children. And then I haven't copied it all, but he proceeds to justify their actions, to find reason to forgive them, to plead with Hashem. and he basically kind of whittles away their sins due to circumstances, due to immaturity, due to circumstance, due to exile, and causes Hashem to forgive them, which is where this verse comes in. No, it's you, actually a reference to Yitzchak. You are our father, not Abraham, who couldn't advocate for us, and not Yaakov, who couldn't advocate for us. Why is it so appropriate that Yitzchak is the one? Because Yitzchak is the model, right? Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim, the deeds of the fathers, being the model for the children. He is a model of redemption. He's the model of the Jew, the Jewish nation, on their land. He is the one who couldn't leave Eretz Israel, representing the idea that we are connected with that land and cannot be separated from it, cannot be pulled away from it. And this is why when we talk about the future era, it's a return to Yitzchak. So, if I may say, the cycle of history is Abraham beginnings, ending up in exile. Then we have Yitzchak, the redemptive state with, the Jewish Commonwealth, the Bet HaMikdash, living in Israel where we should be. Then exile, which is Yaakov, and then we get to the end of time, and who is then the model for that? The hero of our parsha, the one who Hashem said, Gur B'aretz Hazot, you remain, Shchom B'aretz Hazot, remain in this land, don't go anywhere. The Jew belongs in Israel and does not belong at any point being taken away. So that's why Isaiah says, in the future, we're going to talk about Yitzchak and say, you are our father, you are our leader. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.